Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Hebah and this is Hebah's Rollercoaster. As some of you might know, I just recently moved back from Canada and I thought maybe it could be interesting to make a video about what it was like to be in Canada, to live in Canada, as someone who grew up in Europe. So here are 10 things that my European self will probably never forget about Canada. Okay, so we all know this cliche about Canadians being super friendly and apologizing all the time, and I have to say that it's true. It really is true. Canadians are so friendly and they apologize a lot. Like, I heard the word sorry, and yes, they do actually say sorry so many times. And the thing is, it's contagious. Like, I started saying sorry all the time and I would actually pronounce it that way. I mean, come on, I was walking down the street and I stepped on a girl's foot and she apologized to me. What am I supposed to say? Okay, but next time put your foot somewhere else, please, so I don't step on it. No, but Canadians are really friendly. They're very open. They smile a lot. I don't know how someone can be smiling that much. So you could just walk into a random store and the person working in that store would start a conversation and 5 minutes later you're basically friends. So that's very different to how Europeans interact with each other. I think something that was also very interesting was that I was talking to a Canadian friend and she asked me, so are people not friendly in Austria? And I was like, well, of course you do have friendly people, but you know, sometimes people are just polite. They might not be friendly, but they're polite. And she looked at me, she was like, is there a difference between being polite and being friendly? And that was so interesting to me, because like to me there is a big difference between being friendly and being polite. Like, you can be polite without being necessarily friendly, but to her it was like, no, if someone's friendly, they're polite, and if someone's polite, they're friendly. So if someone is like very direct, no, not talking a lot, blah blah blah, people actually see that as being rude, and that's very different to our understanding, I would say. Okay, no one can ever say that they know what cold means unless they have spent a winter in Canada. We do have winter here in Central Europe and Austria, but you cannot really compare, believe me. Canada was a whole other story. So my tolerance of cold has changed completely. I cannot even describe to you how happy I was whenever I look at my weather app and see that we're above 0. That was like, whoa, it's warm. Or even if it had -degrees but with single digitals, for me that was like, whoa, yes, -8, I can survive. I remember my first day, it was like -30 degrees, and these are temperatures I'd never ever experienced in my entire life. And I remember walking to a cafe nearby, meeting a friend, and then that was like the first walk that I took, and the cafe was about 8 minutes away, like 8-minute walk, and I arrived at this cafe and my face was burning. I'm not exaggerating, like my face was burning, my skin was red, and I touched it, I couldn't even really feel my skin because it was so cold. But yeah, later on, of course, you get used to it and you learn how to dress, how to layer up. But I remember this first walk was just terrible. Okay, this is something that's very specific to Toronto. Toronto is amazing. It's a great city, very big. You have everything at your disposal, and the thing is, it's so expensive to live there. Like, if you want to live downtown, it's so expensive. And I guess that's also the reason why you have like downtown Toronto, which has like, I think 3 million people living there, and that's like the really expensive part. And then you have the GTA area, which is like the greater Toronto area, with another 3 million people, which is less expensive, I guess. So if I'm talking nonsense, please let me know in the comments below, but that's what I was told. Especially families live in the GTA area, which is like, you could see it as kind of like suburbs. Also, because obviously the city is very crowded and loud, and as soon as you go to like Mississauga or Scarborough, it gets you know, a bit more family friendly. You know, when I imagine Toronto, like downtown Toronto, I would compare it to New York City. Like, I went to New York City as well, and I felt like I could see a lot of similarities. And someone actually told me that initially when Toronto was designed, they took Chicago as an example, like they were trying to build Toronto in a similar style, but then it kind of shifted to New York style. Something that was amazing in Toronto and that I really, really loved was how liberal and open-minded people were. I felt like it was a very dynamic society, and anything that was different or kind of new was actually very welcomed. Like, people really tried to support that. So of course I'm talking from a very subjective point of view. Maybe some of you have different experiences. If you do, please let me know in the comments below. People were so diverse, you could see everything. Like, you had all kinds of clothing, all kinds of people in all kinds of colors and shapes, and you know, everything was amazing because you felt like you had everything walking down the street. You could just walk down Yonge Street and see all kinds of people, so that was very nice to see. Another very interesting aspect is that, you know, Canada has 2 official languages, so English and French. Obviously, because there's also a French-speaking part of the country, like French Canada, and I thought that that would mean that everyone speaks those 2 languages. Like, even if you grow up in the English-speaking part of the country, you learn French and you speak it. What surprised me was that officially people do learn it in school, but some people might only learn it for like a year, or, you know, so it was really striking to me that someone like me, whose country doesn't have French as an official language, learned French in school for 6 years. But people who live in Canada, which has French as an official language, don't really have to. So that was really striking to me. And I also know that this is kind of like a point of conflict in the country, where people kind of feel that French should be put on the same level as English, and I feel like official institutions are trying to do that by actually putting those 2 languages as their official languages and also asking their employees to speak both of these. So I think these are good initiatives, but again, it was really striking to me that not everyone spoke French, whereas when I went to French Canada, people spoke such perfect English, even though some of them had French as their first language. So talking about the multicultural situation, I would also have to mention that that does not mean that racism doesn't exist at all. Unfortunately, I think it exists everywhere, and even though, alhamdulillah, I didn't really feel it as much, but I know that it still exists. Maybe not in Toronto specifically as a city, but it exists in the country. It's still an issue, it still exists. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, unfortunately. So something that's brought along with the variety of people that live in Canada, or in Toronto specifically, there's also a variety of food. Something that was really cool was to see that there were so many different restaurants that offer such different ethnic food. Like, any food that would come to mind, I'm sure you would find a place in Toronto that actually sells that. I even looked up if there were like traditional Austrian restaurants, and I found some. So yes, anything that you want, there's like everything, and I think that was so cool. I ate food that I had never heard of before, that I had never like seen before, from cultures that I had barely known anything about. So that's definitely a big plus when it comes to Toronto. However, talking about food, Canadian cuisine doesn't really have a lot to offer. I'm sorry I have to say that. I mean, yes, obviously maple syrup is amazing. So yeah, they do have maple syrup, which is great. And poutine, which is okay. I mean, you know, I ate it, it wasn't bad. But that's basically it. I guess Canadian cuisine is basically a diversity of food from all parts of the world. So anything that you want to have, you'd be able to eat it in Toronto specifically, but also in other parts of Canada. Okay, now I'm gonna have to address Canada and Canadians specifically. Guys, what's up with your cell phone contracts? Like, what's up with your cell phones? I mean, how is it possible that I have a contract in one part of the country and then I go to another part of the country and my phone doesn't really work, or I can't really call anyone? How is it possible that you don't have a unified system when it comes to cell phones and like making phone calls? I mean, in Europe they're trying to unify it throughout the whole continent, whereas in Canada you're one country and still it's not working. As soon as you leave like Ontario and you go to Quebec, for example, things change completely. Why? Like, someone please tell me, like, why doesn't that work? Something that I also have to mention when it comes to cliches, when it comes to their English, people would imitate Canadians saying stuff like ABOOT and, you know, who's or something. And I'm not gonna go into the details of the linguistic part of it, but it is true that Canadians do produce the OU in a kind of different place in their mouth compared to US Americans. However, I've never heard anyone say a boot. Linguistically speaking, yes, it's kind of different, but it's not a boot. And I think it's mainly because maybe our ears are just not used to it, so that's why we hear it as that. Even though, as I said, I've never heard anyone say a boot. Like, people would say about. They would say house. So it's not house, but house. That's what I noticed. And again, I mentioned before that I would hear Canadians say sorry instead of sorry. Also, some people don't say against, but against. Again, maybe it just sounds like this to my ears because I'm not used to it. But again, Canadians don't say a boot. Like, I didn't hear anyone say a boot. So this cliche, we can definitely cross out. No, it's not true. So to wrap up this video, I just wanted to say that I loved being in Canada, I loved being in Toronto, I really liked seeing a different place, obviously a different country, and obviously we all always need to keep in mind that every place on this earth has great things about it, also things that might not be as great. However, I think you could learn something from anywhere and everywhere. Just go on an adventure, just try something out. Just see what this world has to offer. So yes, ending on that note, thank you for watching, guys. If you have any comments, any ideas, anything you want to share, I'm always happy to read, so please let me know in the comments below. Go follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and also let me know if you want me to do some more videos about my experience living in Canada. I was actually thinking of making a series out of it, so if you are actually interested in that, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you again, and I hope to see you soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.